Hello, hello, and welcome everybody to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me, as always, is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, everybody.
And thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be discussing now, I think a number of our audience is actually already reasonably familiar with this. We're going to be discussing the American Atheists versus, I've forgotten his first name
Dave
once
Silverman.
again. Dave Silverman, thank you. Situation. I think there's been sort of a lot of scuttlebutt about it, and there was a really moronic broadcast I saw just a while ago on it, and there were two guys who thought they knew what they were doing, and they were just talking about, I don't know who those two idiots were, but oh, it looks like I see one of them right now. So
You got a mirror in front of you or something?
Oh, yes. So we have with us a lawyer to discuss this. He has been studying this quite extensively and has in fact actually been sending me his notes and sending me all his records, which I sincerely appreciate. So we have with us today Nate Broady, Esquire.
Yes. Hello. Hey, everybody. What's going on? I am Nate Broady. I'm on the. I feel like I'm on the. What do they call it? The enemy lines. I'm across enemy lines talking about Dave Silverman. So, but no, this is great. But as you guys know, me and Nick talk all the time, and we've talked about this particular case, and it's fascinating because it really is going to allow us to get to the intricacies of American Atheist and what happens behind the scenes. So, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to answer any questions, and I'm glad to get into it. So it's going to be exciting today.
Well, who the heck are you?
And well, I was gonna say, and speaking of questions, by the way, if you really want to make sure that your question gets seen, remember that we do have super chats now, so you can drop us a super chat, or you can drop us basically the same thing as a super chat through Streamlabs, and the link to that is in the description.
And the Streamlabs one, the nice thing about the Streamlabs one is YouTube doesn't take out 30%, which is wow. Yeah,
they got a racket going on.
They do. Well, I saw a super chat. I saw a couple super chats on one of the other shows I was on. It was for $100, but the ones, if it goes through YouTube, it ends up only being $70. If it goes through Streamlabs, it's $99.70. That's a huge. Streamlabs just takes 30 cents. That's it. But do either one. Yeah, do either one. Nate may need a little help, so we could teach him how to do it if he wants. We'll be slumming. We'll go to his channel and get that done. So Nate, who on earth are you? Who do we have on our channel today?
Well, my name is Nate Broady. I am an attorney. I'm actually, I feel like I'm a half Daredevil, because Daredevil is the blind attorney, but I'm only half blind. That's why if you look at my eye right here, it's like atrophying. So I'm the half blind attorney. I'm not the Daredevil attorney. I don't know if you guys know me from the past. I'm an attorney, and I used to always wear these dark glasses, but now I've got new medication, new glasses. So it's been working out for me. But I've been licensed. I'm licensed here in New York. I was a cop for, I think, 10, 11 years before I became before I became an attorney. So I was out there running around. I was on the street, then I became a supervisor, then I became an investigator, and then I was what they call a house mouse. Those are the cops that you stay in the precinct and you do all the paperwork and all that stuff. So at the end, and then I was just moved up to management. So I was doing that for, and I've investigated things from rapes to from sexual assaults to, breaking and enterings to all different types of stuff. So then after that, I went to law school. I went to law school and I became a lawyer. And my first job out of law school was at the DA's office. So I became an ADA, and I prosecuted maybe over 100, maybe 150 people. I used to do sex trafficking.
You were a sex
prostitution.
trafficker? Interesting.
No, oh my God.
Phrasing.
That's true. That's true. I got to be more careful if I'm an attorney.
Yeah, you got to be more careful if you're going to be on this show. But okay, that's
but no, I was I prosecuted for about a year. But
I'm getting the popcorn. I want to watch this. Okay, Ansgar, keep going.
So I was a prosecutor for a short time. So it was great because one of my more interesting cases, I actually investigated a ring in Nigeria, an international ring, where what they would do is there was a baby farm where they would take women. Some would be kidnapped and some would be paid to a location, impregnate them, make them have babies, and then sell the babies on the black market.
Holy
So
crap.
I was involved in that investigation. It involved Interpol. So it's crazy. Trust me, you could tell me any crazy story you want to tell me, and I'll tell you a real one that's true. Like, for instance, I arraigned an actual hitman. Like, people usually talk about hitman. I arraigned an actual hitman who had like 30 bodies, who worked for the Colombians, it's
You've
amazing
lived
work.
an interesting life, my friend. A really
Oh my
interesting
God,
life.
you don't know how it is being an attorney on the criminal side. It's fascinating. But then I actually started. So then I left the DA's office and started teaching. I was at the law school. I was a lecturer. I was a law school lecturer, which is more or less a professor. So I had students. I gave grades. I worked there for about 2 years. It was a fantastic experience. I would never say anything bad about those people. It was really, really one of the best experiences I've had as a professional, teaching other students how to be attorneys. And then now I'm doing YouTube. So I'm on here. I have most of the stuff from law school for the first year of law school because I taught some of the classes. So my channel is really devoted to two things. It's really devoted to teaching the law. So if you're interested in legal topics, like my next video is going to be on defamation. So if you're interested on legal topics, that'll be it. And then it's on about things like these cases. My first big case was the non-sec case, which I think was fantastic to go through. And this case now is the second case, which is another fantastic case to go through. So we go through the intricacies of the case and stuff. So that's a little bit about me and what my channel is about and what I do. And I thank you guys for having me on too. This is amazing. So
Our pleasure. I do want to ask a question because if you're going to hit defamation, just a hypothetical, because I love to run
Sure.
hypotheticals. If a person claims that a YouTube content creator is taking money that isn't his and spending it on $400 suits, is that liable in any way? Just asking.
It really all depends. If you feel defamed, a lot of times with the defamation claims, has it hurt your, what damages have you suffered because of this alleged defamation?
Okay, we'll have to get into that. I'll ask you more about this hypothetical later because I think it's a very interesting topic.
Very hypothetical.
For me.
Yes.
Very hypothetical.
Oh, yeah.
Exclusive.
Oh, yeah.
It's perfectly hypothetical. There isn't any reason I'm wearing this.
Actually,
one thing I do
you guys, watching the two of you kind of go back and forth in some of your friendly debates over the non-sec issue was really interesting from somebody who, I have layman's understanding of law at best, so it's been kind of interesting to watch the two of you kind of go back and forth.
We
me
did
and
go back
Nick
and
actually
forth on Twitter.
agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we actually agree on most of the points. Like, most people would probably be shocked to see that 90% of the stuff that happened in the non-sec, me and Nick were like lockstep. Like, yeah, we agree, we agree. Even with the fraud piece and everything, like people for some reason thought I was saying it's that Steve committed fraud, and I was like, well, no, I'm not saying he committed fraud. I'm saying what the evidence is showing, or what Kyle is trying to bring up. And I even said that I thought it was a like a sideball, like, something that he was throwing out there to distract us from the non sequitur. So, and Nick agreed with all that. So a lot of times, there were certain low points that we didn't agree with.
Yeah, that's usually the way expert opinions go on a subject. They usually don't diverge on the major points. It's the little microscopic bits where there is debate.
Well, it was is it a business? That was the one where
was it
the most contentious.
Was it a business? And then we researched it and found out, well, technically under that code it was, but then in other situations, and that's what happens with law. It's so fascinating, and it's so many different. There's no one answer. It's all situational based. So.
Yep, it was very worthwhile, a lot of fun, and I've been learning a lot too. It's been a while since I've really engaged on these topics, so that's one reason why I think he and I enjoy discussing this, is because it's been a while since I've had an opportunity to really engage about the law. And, you know, it's like Nate and I can do that, and we can think in a legal sense together and hash it out. And it requires hashing out. The law is not simple. It requires it requires engagement, and it requires presence.
I just wanted to say to our audience as well, if you at any point notice that people's lips are out of sync with their words, YouTube is having a problem recently, and a lot of people are having that issue with live streaming where sound and video seems to get out of sync. So just know what's going on, and yeah.
Oh, joy. So this is going to be permanently etched probably the wrong way unless they find a way to retroactively fix it. All right. Well, so now speaking of the law, there is an interesting thing, which again, I think most people know, but we're going to just sort of start from ground zero. American Atheists, which is a reasonably large nonprofit. I was going to look it up. I don't know if it's the largest American civil liberties organization for atheism, but it is a very large and well-respected one. They fired their CEO, Dave Silverman, and he took it very hard, and he's been talking about how hard he took it. And you and I discussed this on your channel. He got very depressed. It kind of sort of ended what he was thinking about for his career and how he was going forward. He then filed a suit against them, claiming a number of things. So I wanted to discuss this. So let's start from the beginning. So what happened with him getting fired here?
Well, from what I understand, now again, I'm going to have to go to the reports that have been reported as facts from BuzzFeed and from American Atheist. So just to give you guys,
BuzzFeed is always facts, Nate.
Well,
if it's BuzzFeed, there's Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, Reuters, Associated Press,
BuzzFeed.
Yeah. More like the tabloids you can get at the grocery store. Weekly World News, BuzzFeed.
All right, so we're going to go with the expert reporting at BuzzFeed. Marvelous. This is I'm thrilled.
So what I did was, at first, obviously, I don't know if you guys know, David Silverman's been going around different channels telling his story. So I went and actually asked the other side, like, what the hell's the story? So from what I understand, there were some internal complaints about David Silverman before anybody heard of these sexual assault allegations. There were internal complaints. Now, BuzzFeed reported that that the first complaints came in. One was about David Silverman and his book. Like he had just put out a book, and there were concerns that he was utilizing funds from American Atheist to promote his book in some way. Maybe he was, traveling to places promoting his book when he's supposed to be doing American Atheist stuff. Whatever those allegations are, that was one part of the allegation.
So we don't actually know
we don't know the specifics of that. No.
Okay.
But the only report was that it was related to him promoting his book and American Atheist. So whatever those specifics are, we don't know. The second allegation, again, this is BuzzFeed reporting, I don't know this as a fact, was that there was a woman who was hired to a senior position at American Atheist, and that woman had a sexual relationship with David Silverman. So when they found that out, then they had rescinded that appointment of this woman to this position based on the sexual relationship with David Silverman. Again, that's BuzzFeed reporting. So that was supposedly the initial complaint. And then when that initial complaint came in,
so that was the initial complaint against Silverman.
Mm-hmm.
That was
at least according to BuzzFeed.
Ostensibly,
yes.
That's what BuzzFeed is saying, is that was their complaint against Silverman.
And we have no other like corroborating reporting or anything on that. Only BuzzFeed.
No. Now the reason why is there was some, but the reason why we don't have specifics on exactly why Mr. Silverman was fired was because the law doesn't allow companies to tell you why employees were fired, because it makes them unemployable. So for instance, if you're in most states, you can't, if you're fired from a job, the job can't say you were fired. They can either give you a good reference or no reference at all. And that's a protection for the employee, so you won't become unhireable. And that's what happened. And that's what happened with here. It was David Silverman what the company's not able to tell you why. So he's been hiding under that, saying, well, the reason why is because of the sexual assault allegations, which is not. Oh, I got my daughter here saying she poo poots. Don't mind her. She just handed me a whole bunch of clothes. She's like, Daddy, put my clothes on.
I
But go
don't
ahead.
mind, but I'm hoping she's going to give us a legal opinion. If you're going to have her on, let's put her to work.
Well, now I got to put some clothes on her. But yeah. So with the David Silverman, so that was the initial filing of why he was supposedly fired. I'm not fired, but what the initial complaint was. After that, the board voted to suspend him for whatever reason for these two complaints. So they voted unanimously to suspend him. Then, from my understanding, these other complaints started trickling in. These other two complaints, but I think that I'm not sure if the decision was made to fire him then or afterwards. But from my understanding, those other two complaints had come in. The two sexual assault allegations had come in, and the board had decided, well, because of all of this, they took everything into account. Then they decided not to continue Mr. Silverman's services. Now his contract does allow him to be fired without cause, and they exercised that right to fire him without cause.
So so it's not entirely inaccurate, but not entirely accurate for him to say that he was fired because of these things.
Yeah, it's well, from my understanding and from my investigation, it seems like they had some bearing on why he was fired, but they weren't the sole reason why he was fired. No.
So it's not entirely accurate.
Yeah, but obviously, if you have the president of your company, sleeping with women allegedly with quos everywhere, you got one that just happened, and you got one in 2012 that's coming forth saying, "Hey, it was me too," and then you find out he's sleeping with other employees, then it's kind of like, well, let's, what would you do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, and so now he's mounted a pretty aggressive defense against this. And it's actually reasonably recent. I think he was reasonably quiet about it until recently. He filed a lawsuit. He created a web page where he talks about his side of the story and the defense. He's got audio clips there. He's got ostensibly evidence on his side there. So what was the suit that he filed?
Well, now this is where it gets crazy. So after he's fired, David Silverman waits about 1.5 years before he files his lawsuit. Now, his lawsuit first starts with a defamation claim. He's saying the women who said these things defamed me, right? Now in his lawsuit, he doesn't really say they defamed him, but he just alleges defamation. And then he also alleges tortious interference, which is another charge. And that's we'll go into what that is. And then he also alleges breach of contract. In other words, he said that they breached his contract by firing him improperly. And in his interviews, he's been saying that claim, the improper firing, was all about due process, him not having due process, and him not getting due process from American Atheists. So those are his claims what he set them out to be. And again, that's reading his complaint very charitably, because David Silverman went to the courthouse. Well, I can't say he went to the courthouse. He filed that complaint by himself. Like, he didn't get a lawyer. He actually just filled out the paperwork by himself. So it's a very poorly written complaint.
All by him, no lawyer. He just submits this on his own.
It looks like it, the way it's written. And again, when you look at the complaint, it looks like, you can tell it's a form. He filled out the form. He got X's on the form. It looks like a non-lawyer filled out that form, because I would say this: if a lawyer filled out that complaint, that initial and the amended complaint, they would be in trouble. They would have some problems with the ethics board, because they were like, you filed this, we got to check your license. Your license may not be good.
Well, let's take a look at two of those claims, because I think two of them we can probably get rid of and probably not spend a whole heck of a lot of time on. The one on defamation has, as I understand it, so let's look at the defamation, and let's look at the due process. Actually, let's do due process for a second first. When he says, "I didn't get due process," what do you think he means by that?
All right. Generally, when someone says, "I haven't received due process," they means that they're engaged with another party, and that party has to has to go through steps to either fire you, to keep your contract, whatever those steps are. Like there's a procedure in place to fire you. So when someone says my company didn't give me due process, what we generally do is look at the contract, whatever contractual agreement you had, and made sure your company followed that process within the contract before they terminated you.
Right, but
That will
his
be the due
contract
process
says
owed to
they
you by
can
the
fire
company.
him without cause. So
Yes. So that's the thing. So when he goes on and says something like, I was fired without due process, then he's now got to say, well, what due process was he owed? Because his contract says that he can be fired without cause. He was fired without cause. What else would he be looking for?
right.
What? Well, it sounds like what he's saying is the board didn't even listen to my side of the story. All they did was they said, "Hey, there are some allegations. We don't like these allegations," and we fired him. What
Which
does
I
that
mean
sound like to you?
doesn't seem fair, but I mean if it's in the contract they can fire him without cause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what it comes down to. And I always tell people like this: people equate the law with being moral. Number one, the law is not moral. Everyone out there, the law is not a book of morals. It is not. The bad guy does win lawsuits. It's possible. The law is about equity. And what happens is David Silverman, he may be right. They may have just said, hey, it's Tuesday and we don't like David Silverman, so we're firing him. That could be the case, even though I don't believe it's the case and I have no evidence of that. But if that was the case, if that scenario, that hypothetical I put out was the case, he would still have gotten due process as long as they followed the procedures in the contract. The procedure was a vote of the board. They voted unanimously, 10 days written notice. Supposedly he got that. And that's it. You know, if it says we can fire you without cause and that's the procedure, then as long as they did that, then he has no argument.
Right.
Well,
Unless the state specifically has some kind of law that says that kind of contract is not acceptable, which we don't, from what I understand, there is nothing like that in this case.
No, well, he hasn't alleged that. And if that was the case, then he would have to file that in his paperwork. The fact
Right.
that, you know, this clause is what they would do is they'd read that clause out if it violated the New Jersey state statute. But it you know, he hasn't alleged that, so it may not.
Gotcha.
So essentially, well, first of all, I think we should have on the record now, and Mr. Broady has said, and I think we should let everyone know that Mr. Broady has said that the reason he was fired was because it was Tuesday. So now that we've got that
And they don't like
established,
his face.
and they don't like his face.
Yeah.
That was a remarkable claim for Mr. Broady to make, and I think, you know, I'm just glad we broke it here first. So that's good. Now that I've strawman you,
They fired him for Tuesday. Well, but the thing is that but the point is that I think everybody should know is they could have fired him for that reason.
yes,
And that would have been legal. And that's the point. It's not about whether it was fair, it's about whether it's legal.
Right.
And here's the thing, which is he's claiming, if I understand it, that isn't fair. But essentially, I mean, he signed the contract. He ostensibly knew what was in it, and that was a part of the contract that he had agreed to for however long. How long was he CEO?
It was, well, I think he was president for 7 years, and he was and this was a 2-year contract, and it was signed in 2017. So and I think it ended in 2018. So you have the 2 years.
Okay, and it sounds like it was being renewed, and I believe that was in the contract the entire. So he knew it was there. I think because he had a good relationship with them, he didn't think it would be exercised, which is what everybody always thinks. But the amount of money that he was getting paid was commensurate with signing and having that kind of the sort of Damocles over your head. And, you know, that's they paid him. He took the checks and he agreed with the contract up until the point at which he got terminated. So it sounds to me like he's probably got no recourse there.
Yeah, he should have, to be honest with you. But again, when you're in a relationship like that, they've been on a long-term relationship. He was there for 22 years, 7 years as president, something like that. You would suspect the contract. You know, they probably were signing the same contract year after year. You know, nobody ever looked at it. But this is something for all you people out there who are in these jobs with these long-term contracts. Sometimes it may just be good to take a look at the contract before you sign a new one and say, well, hey, this clause right here, do we really can this just be for cause instead of without cause? Because again, you know, and maybe they would negotiate maybe a settlement. Maybe, hey, all right, you take $10,000 less, and we can only fire you for cause. But he didn't do that. He signed what was there. He said it was okay, and now he can't renege and say, "Oh my God, they fired me," you know, unjustly. No, they fired you based on a contract that you signed.
All right, so I think he's going to have significant issues with that claim. Now, the other claim that I think is probably as difficult for him to get anywhere with would be the defamation one. Where does that claim stand, in your opinion?
Well, for defamation, there are two types of defamation. I want to make sure that for defamation, you have 5 elements that you have to generally satisfy in a defamation claim, and those 5 elements are: you have to have a false statement, that false statement must be about or concerning the plaintiff, that false statement must actually be defamatory, that the person must have suffered some damages because of this statement, and I forget, is about a concern and false statement. But there are 5 elements. I probably missed one. But when you talk about defamation per se, you don't have to satisfy all 5 elements. You would just only have to satisfy 3, and those 3 elements were: it's a false statement about or concerning the plaintiff that was published to a third party. And what happens is that Mr. Silverman's complaint that people are calling him a criminal would fit defamation per se. The fact that somebody's saying that he's a criminal, he's committed criminal sex act. Defamation per se is those are if you accuse someone of being a criminal, the law says that is so bad that you don't have to prove you were damaged. You don't have to prove it's defamatory. The fact that somebody's accused you factually of being a criminal is enough where you could be liable of defamation. Now, I'm assuming David Silverman is saying that they're alleging that I raped them or that I've committed sexual assault.
Right.
That's the defamatory per se. But the problem is that in New Jersey, there is a statute of limitations of 1 year for libel and slander, which are defamation. So he filed his action April 2018. Not filed his action. He was fired for the defamation of April 2018, and he just sued July 2019. So his action, based on the law in New Jersey, is barred by the statute of limitations because he filed it too late.
What if it's ongoing? What if they're still saying it? Does that matter?
Well, if they did say it, then it would be up to him to show that they republished it, because every time you publish the defamatory statement,
Gotcha.
the action rises anew. So, but he's only said in his complaint that they've only said the statement once, and that was in April 2018. So if that's the case, if his cause of action just says they published it then his cause of action is time barred based on his own complaint.
Gotcha.
So the a statute of limitations sets a time limit under which you have a certain period of time before you can, a certain period of time after which you cannot act on a complaint you have against somebody. Why on earth would the law have such restrictions? If somebody's done something wrong, why can't you just come after them 20 years later?
Well, because witnesses forget, memories are forgotten, claims are done, and the law is not allowed for you to hold it over somebody's head for 100 years or 20 years. There are certain things that the law says, you have a certain amount of time to recover, and then after that time, then you can't recover anymore because it hasn't affected you in such a negative way. Now, one thing about SOLs, I call them SOLs, and that's blank out of luck, because that's what we usually call them.
You can curse on this channel. Shit out of luck. Yeah.
We call them shit out of luck.
You cannot say shit on this channel. Please don't say shit on this channel.
Oh.
So, but that's what we usually call them. And what happens is that in some cases, like for instance, with sexual assaults, some states sexual assaults, you have a 5-year statute of limitations, meaning if the woman doesn't come forward, they can't prosecute. Now, some people say that's unfair, but that was put into place because that was saying, well, someone who does commit something like this after 5 years, they shouldn't be able to be prosecuted. So people want to change that to maybe 20 years or have no statute of limitations. But something like defamation, it's really like, hey, if you haven't brought this up in a year, 3 years later, you can't not hold this guy in a court because he said something 3 years ago. So it's done for both courtroom efficiency. You don't want people bringing in claims for 20 years ago. It's done for legal efficiency, for fairness, for fundamental fairness. The fact that 5 years later, I can't hold you accountable for something you said 3 years ago, and it's done to help the legal system just move things forward and force people to bring claims in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, if you want to hold something responsible for something you said 20 years ago, that's what Twitter is for.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's why I listen. I have screenshotted everything Nate has said, and I'm just waiting. I'm just
Well, of
waiting.
course.
I'm laying in wait for exactly, because that's what Twitter is for. Twitter doesn't serve any other purpose than to get into really stupid fights with people over shit that doesn't matter. Which is why I try to get Nate to be on there more. So it sounds to me like he's time barred on that, and there really is no immediate way that I can see that he could make any progress on that claim. So
well,
that's
well,
two of
one
the
thing
three claims. Yeah.
yeah, but one thing I want to say specifically about the defamation claim, and this is for all you want to be lawyers out there. What you guys have to do before you go and file a litigation, especially like a defamation, you have to go and find out what you have to say to have your action really filed. See, one thing bad about Mr. Silverman's claim is that for his defamation claim, for instance, he didn't actually put what the defamatory statement was. So the court has no idea what the defamation is. It's just like me saying, yeah, this guy said bad words about me. You say, okay, what were those bad words? And you say, I don't know. Well, then you don't have a claim for defamation. And that's one thing that Mr. Silverman has not done. He has not, he literally didn't put what the defamatory statement was in the action. So
So
the court
even
doesn't
if
have
he had
anything to
made
even
it in
evaluate.
time, he would have to rewrite he would have to submit a new claim anyways, and now it's definitely over time.
Exactly.
Wait. The courts want him to be specific. They're not going to guess as to what the. Are you sure about that?
Hey, it's a non-mind. It's called the non-mind reading rule. If we have to read your mind, then you have no case.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think you
shoot,
guys need
okay,
to
so
start hiring some psychics into the court, man.
half the litigation I was planning for next week is out the window now. This is just fucking great. What the hell?
Oh my God.
All right. So
Give the judge a crystal ball.
give the judge here you go, Your Honor. This is my evidence. Just rub it for a little while. Take a look into it. You'll see why I'm right. Judges love that kind of thing. I would like to see. You know how much money I would pay to have that done to Judge Judy? Just
Oh my
to
God,
Judge
that would
Judy.
be fantastic.
That would be so good. Judge Judy was just like,
I would love to see that. Oh my God.
oh boy. All right. So I think that leaves us with tortious interference and any updates that have occurred since then. But it sounds to me like two of those three claims he's going to have a problem with. And so I'm aware there's been some updates that I'm not entirely familiar with, but I suspect you are. But there's also the tortious interference claim.
Yes. Now the tortious interference claim again. This is why you have to, I think, do a little research before you file, because he just asserts tortious interference, and he asserts them against three people: Matt Delahanty and the two women who have accused him of sexual assault. Now, the problem is that there are two categories of tortious interference. So I can't just scream out, yell, tortious interference. I got to kind of be specific and say which tortious interference I'm alleging. So there's one based on business acumen, and there's one based on contractual agreements. And so everybody can understand, tortious interference based on a contractual agreement deals with two people who are in a contract, and then some third party interferes with that contract by, let's say, defaming one of the parties, and then that contract is broken because of this defamatory statement. And usually it's broken through it's broken now I can't.
The guy who made Jawbreakers, the comic book, actually had a case on that. He had all these contracts lined up to basically sell his comics in stores, and people came out on Twitter and called him a misogynist and all this other stuff, and they refused to sell his comics in stores, and he actually won his tortious interference case.
Now that's not tortious interference of a contract. That's tortious interference of a business. Now, in tortious interference of a business, that the example that you just brought up, that the difference there is that he wasn't already in a contractual agreement. He had a probable contractual agreement. In other words, I'm going to contract with these stores to sell my stuff in stores. Some defamation happened, and the person was like, "Hey, I'm not."
No,
even
they
gonna
already
contract
had.
with you to sell it.
They were already getting ready to ship to the stores. He already had things lined up, and they backed out because of what was said on Twitter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if now the difference would be if they were already in a contract and then the person breached that contract, breaches them saying we're not going to exercise the contract. That's tortious interference of the contract. If they weren't in a contract, and this guy was saying, well, and I'm not going to sign this contract because of the defamation, then that's tortious interference of a business. But
Nice.
again, each one of those has different elements, and Mr. Silverman doesn't say which one he's actually pleading. He just says tortious interference, and you see how it can get confusing.
Right.
All right. So even now, so on this one, even if he's got a claim, it looks like the previous ones he's got serious issues. Here he might potentially have a claim, if I'm understanding, but the problem is he
Yes.
hasn't explained it well enough for anyone to understand precisely what the claim is and what the. So
But I'm curious, if they can fire him without cause, that's his contract. Is there any way that he could even prove tortious interference?
Well, he could. Well, it all depends. Again, for the contract, he wouldn't be able. If he's saying tortious interference of a contract, he can't, because he'd have to prove that the contract was actually violated in some way. And if they fired him justly and the contract wasn't violated, then that goes out the window. He may have tortious interference of a business. Let's say if he had another job opportunity that was going to open up, somebody was going to hire him, and then based on the defamatory statements, they didn't hire him, then he may have something. But
or his
what I'm
book
understanding,
sales, I would imagine his book sales, I would imagine would be he could go through that because it's
yes.
that, yeah, because he's selling
But
that.
the thing is, he would have to prove those statements are false too. So and
Right.
that's something that he would have to go through. And how can you prove that these allegations are false? It's hard to prove they're true. Now you're trying to prove that they're false, and that's one of the first elements for defamation. Even if you have a bad statement against you, if you can't prove that it's false, then you don't have a claim for defamation. So it all kind of works together in that way.
How would he even go about proving that?
Well, sometimes some like, again, let's if we dissect the two allegations. The first one was from Rose Sinclair. She was outed in the actual article. She says that her statement is that I don't believe that I was that she wasn't drunk enough to give consent. In other words, she's saying that she believes that she may have been too drunk to give consent. Well, that statement, how do you prove that statement to be false?
Right.
Because she's saying, she's giving you an opinion. I believe that I was too drunk. So that in of itself is, so you can't hold a defamation claim for that because it's just an opinion. He's saying that allegation is a lie, but again, it's her opinion about her state in that particular time. So you don't have a defamation claim. The
So
second case, go
But
ahead.
it actually have to prove, just because she added the word "I believe" there, and this is the other thing, which is when people listen to my speech, people who recognize lawyers, they sit there, okay, he talks like a lawyer, because I do add, I'll add the word ostensibly a lot, or I'll add this or that, which to try to clarify. But what he'd actually have to argue, he could do it, but what he'd have to argue is that she was lying about what she believes, which is a really high bar. How do you sit there and argue that what she's claiming she believed at the time she didn't actually believe, but by saying I believe, she changed the standard?
Yeah, it sounds like in general he would have to try and prove that she was saying these things with malicious intent to harm him.
Yeah, but again, how do you? And the reason why opinions are not actionable, exactly for what Nick said, you can't prove somebody doesn't believe what they say they believe. You can't prove that somebody believes something they don't believe. It's one of those things where defamation is about factual statements that can be proven false. And this is not a factual statement that can be proven false. So for her,
it would have to be something like audio comes forward with her in a conversation with a girlfriend saying, I'm gonna fuck him over, and this is what I'm gonna say.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And now for the other one, where you actually have someone saying some things that are more factual, yes, he would be able to prove that. But the way he's been trying to prove it is just not like the secretly recorded tape of him and Matt Dillahunty. That's going to be thrown out because, number one, it's hearsay, and number two, you need the full audio to find out what exactly was said in full context. You can't. The court's not going to allow you to take out a 1 minute 30-second clip and say this is what it is.
They don't let you clip people out of context. Well, that's just not very fair.
They're going to need the full context.
No.
And then
I did that. I did that with Ansgar. I had a clip of him saying, "I love to kick puppies," and it was a great clip. I played it all the time. And then somebody, I think it may have been Ansgar, came out with the full thing, which was he said, "I'd have to be crazy to say I love to kick puppies," and that just ruined my narrative. I was so pissed. I had him.
Yeah, but it's funny because well, even with that, it's the fact of the matter is, I know a lot of people have been making hay about the fact that Matt Dillahunty forgave or supposedly forgave David Silverman. Number one, I've not.
let's talk about that
I
for 1 second. Just to put it in
okay, go ahead.
context. So there is a audio clip. Like I said, he has Silverman has a website saying, here's the truth. Here's everything that happened. Here's all my evidence destroying what everybody said.
Go lay down.
He's been going on a lot of shows. We had talked about inviting him on the show. We haven't reached a conclusion on that yet, but certainly we've talked about it. We're having you on to discuss this. But he put on an audio clip that was about 1 minute and 15 seconds. And in that clip, he put on 2 audio clips that I wanted to discuss because they dovetail into this. One of the clips was of him talking with one of the board members, and they said, yes, we had a vote, and we've learned there are some new allegations, and that's why we're letting you go. So he put that clip, and then he put another one of him talking to Matt Dillahunty, where Dillahunty appears to say, hey, everything's cool between us. There are no problems. We're good. So I think that's the clip you're talking about, the second one. And
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. So what happens is that it would be irrelevant if Matt Dillahunty forgave him. Like, that's irrelevant to the fact of, in that particular situation that this alleged victim was in, did she feel or did she consent to this particular sexual act? And the fact that Matt forgave him, that is not relevant to the actual incident that occurred. So I understand a husband will be more angry at his wife's abuser, but number one, nobody's actually spoken to Matt. We don't know where that recording came from. And the fact of the matter is that if that's true, even if it is true, I think it's irrelevant to the fact of whether this woman was assaulted by this man or not.
Right.
An
intrigued feline actually has an interesting question. It says, if someone is constantly spewing allegations whilst covering it in caveats, would that still be smearing the person's reputation? Could a lawyer make a case out of that?
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm not saying Nate kicks puppies. I'm saying nobody knows if Nate kicks puppies.
Well, you know what? But with all this, there are huge caveats to all this, because again, I'm dumbing the law down to a very super simple demonstrations, like even with this definition thing. For instance, let's say somebody defamed me online right now, said that Nate Broady is whatever, I'm a criminal, whatever they could say. The fact of the matter is that because I'm on YouTube, I'm a public person. What that means is that I would have to now prove that person who said that defamatory comment about me knew for a fact that it was false. Now that's something I would have to prove. Now, how can I prove something is false? That is an extremely high standard. It's called with actual malice. It's an extremely high standard. That's why in even most recent case, the National Enquirer published an article that what's his name could see, Stevie Wonder can see, right? They published this article. He can see. People were making fun of it, like, oh, Stevie Wonder can see. People were harassing Stevie Wonder, but Stevie Wonder could not sue the National Enquirer because he would not be able to prove that they absolutely knew for a fact that he couldn't see, or that
right.
that's the standard. So that's the standard that I would have to work with, and that's the standard, unfortunately, I think you gentlemen would have to work with too if you were sued. It's a constitutional standard. So
I will point this out. People blame the lawyers for that. So the first thing is, oh God, it's the lawyers. But this is why people don't like lawyers, Nate, is because of this. It's like, well, that's the law. It's not the lawyer's fault, but let's blame the lawyers.
Lawyers in general often get blamed for the law itself.
Yeah, and the only thing we do, don't forget, only thing we do is we try to find those little in-between places where you can find arguments to make the argument that this is happening, that this is like for instance, with YouTube, people have been arguing that YouTube personalities should be held as private figures, but the court doesn't say that. And the reason why is because the court says the reason why about the actual malice standard for public people, for people who want to be in public, is that the court says that if you are a person who seeks public attention, you must take the good with the bad. But if you're a private person who doesn't seek public attention, then your privacy is going to be valued more than a public person. And so that's what happens. We come out, we're saying this stuff, so we got to take the good with the bad. But somebody who's private, who's not like there, then their standard is going to be a little different.
Yeah, if you really have trouble with it, go whine on Twitter, which is what most
All right,
celebrities
so
do, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I think we've covered most of the original complaint. Now, I think it ended up being amended,
Yes.
but and then even since then, now both so he has now actually obtained an attorney,
Yes.
and uh, he has asked and gotten approval from AA to amend the complaint. Why on earth would AA give him permission to amend the complaint? How does that help them? Why would they allow him to do that?
Well, right now, I'm looking because at first I had got the impression that American Atheist was allowing him to amend the complaint because they were late in filing their answer. So there was some issue there. But if you look at the court's website,
So if they let him file, if they let him redo his complaint, he would allow them to file even though it was late.
so yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
So from my understanding, that was the agreement. We'll file late, and then you can file unamended. But looking at the court website now, the court has put a date, November 22nd, as the date they're going to rule on the motion to dismiss. So I'm not sure what's going to happen on well, let me go back. So David Silverman filed his amended complaint. American
Yes.
Atheist filed its response with the motion to dismiss. And then Rose Sinclair filed an attorney filed her attorney's from I think Maryland. They filed a motion to have their attorney who is practicing in Maryland be admitted to New Jersey to practice for just this case. And I think it's called ad hoc vici. So that attorney has petitioned the court to say, hey, I want to represent Rose Sinclair in a New Jersey court, but I'm a Maryland attorney. So
So he's
on
not a
November
member
20th,
of the he's not a member of the bar there, but he's
not a
going to
member of the bar
practice
in New
there.
Jersey. Yes,
Okay.
and asking to practice. Now, generally, what you would do is you would ask the motion for the court to allow you to practice, and then that attorney will be like your second seat. In other words, that attorney will help you with like the local customs. What are the norms at that particular court? Because each court has like different little quirks and stuff that you'd have to know. So they'll have the local attorney also help you with your filings and stuff. So that's what Rose Sinclair is asking. So the court's going to resolve all of that supposedly on November 22nd. So no, they're not going to actually be. The court has also said that nobody's going to be coming in to make the arguments since nobody requested to make oral arguments. So this is all going to be done on the paperwork. So I'm thinking if this case is just pleaded so poorly, the judge may say, well, listen, why would I amend the complaint? Why would I allow you to amend the complaint again when your defamation case is time barred? That's just wasting my time. Where you haven't told us anything for tortious interference. You're just wasting our time. Unless you can give me something of substance today, or I can see, then it's not going to go forward. So we'll see what happens on November 22nd. But the judge said they're going to rule on American Atheist motion to dismiss on November 22nd. So we'll see what happens.
All right. So now, hold on a sec. So now there was a charge that came up, and I think this is going to be difficult to get into, but I think it's worth getting into because one of the things, and you've heard me say this before, I keep saying, why didn't he get a lawyer on the first when he first filed? Now, ostensibly, once again using that rather large word, it was because he couldn't afford one.
Yes.
Now, the argument that I tend to look at, and this doesn't change whether or not he can afford one, but this is the argument that I tend to look at, which is if he's claiming that this destroyed his life, that he's unemployable now as a result of this, so he's losing hundreds of thousands a year, so on and so forth. At that point, it's sort of like, even if an attorney is going to cost you $10,000, $15,000 down the road, you don't have to pay all that up front, but even if they're going to cost you that, how can you afford not to if this is the claim that you've lost that much money and this is what you're seeking to remedy? He didn't get one. Now, an argument, so it's entirely possible. He just even if the potential reward is really, really high, if an attorney is not going to do it on contingency, you may still not be able to get one. But there's another argument that was made, and this is kind of a concerning one, and I think it's just worth hitting, which is because it's got multiple facets. There is a technique that people have used in the past. In the original complaint against Silverman, the women in the complaint did not give their names, and they are protected and shielded by law, and their names cannot be revealed. Now, Silverman did a number of streams where he did not reveal their names. He referred to them, I forget whether it was person A, person B, but he did not reveal their names because they're potential victims, and he can't dox them. But when he filed, when I think it was when he filed the amendment, or the cross complaint, the defamation, he was allowed to use their names, and by using their names and attaching that to the original complaint, he is now allowed to use their names across the board in the complaint. Now, this has, in the past, on occasion, been used as a technique to dox the people who have filed the complaint. Some people have been worried that that happened in this case, and if an attorney thought that that was the reason he was filing, an attorney could not file it for him. He would have to file it himself.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that I don't know anything. I don't know what happened, but it's something I've been considering and concerned about, and I was curious what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, well, when I initially saw the initial complaint, I said, "Well, this thing is so poorly drawn. It doesn't make any sense." And it just seemed like somebody just got angry. F you guys! Here's my lawsuit. Here's $250.
Fix this.
Yes, but when you do look at the streams, especially the Cult of Dusty stream, when he first brought up the lawsuit, Cult of Dusty even said, well, yeah, David Silverman couldn't name, like he went through this and said that we couldn't name the accusers, but he said, but I heard from Silverman's people that they just filed the lawsuit and now we can name them because they've been named in the lawsuit. So yes, that is a technique that is used to out accusers in some way, because you're naming them in a lawsuit and saying there's defamation, making it to become public record. But I'm not sure if that was Mr. Silverman's intention, but it does look, it reasonably can be seen that way. So,
well, I mean, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I can kind of understand why someone would do it, especially when there's accusations of sexual assault. Let's face it, no matter how an allegation goes, sexual assault, usually the most damage that is done in a sexual assault charge is in the social sphere, is in the court of public opinion. If enough people think that you have that the charge is credible, that can destroy livelihoods,
yes,
in a big way. So I can kind of understand why someone would go through this to say, okay, I'm going to fight this in the court of public opinion, and the only way I can do that is to put their names out in the public sphere. It's not right, it's not legal, but I can see why someone would take that strategy.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is that the reason why we don't like to name accusers is for a very specific reason, because of the whole public shame and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So it is kind of scumbaggish to do that, because look, for instance, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he didn't name his accusers, and all of those accused were found to be, done. So
yeah. No, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's a good thing to do. Just saying I can see why someone would do it. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I'm with you with that.
One of the things that I think is always interesting about this, there seems to be a common misperception that one side is always right and the other side is always wrong. And in my experience, 99% of the time, it's not that simple. If it were that simple, they wouldn't be going to trial. They wouldn't have to, this would already be solved, because like, okay, look, we know what happened, and there you go. So both sides often think they're right. And in the same narrative, so he actually took a polygraph. Silverman took a polygraph and passed it. But one of the things I've said is my suspicion is all his accusers could take a polygraph and pass it. So then what do you do? And unfortunately, that's just one of the things of the nuances of sort of how human beings work and how we perceive different narratives. I certainly understand if I felt I were innocent, which I assume he feels, I would want to be able to defend myself. And I would view the ability to give their names as part of the ability to defend myself. That doesn't mean I'd be right. That doesn't mean even morally, legally, anything like that. But I do, I understand a
The human
frustration
mind is
thing.
very good at inventing at making us feel as though we are the superhero of our story, no matter what we
Yes.
do. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know
So,
what?
yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, please, you.
No, what I was saying is, I think at the end of the day, this lawsuit, it seems like it was, I can say this, that I've spoken to people on both sides, and it seems interesting enough that most people don't think this lawsuit is serious. No one who have read this lawsuit thinks it's going to be serious. But I think David Silverman, he's trying. I'm not sure what he's trying to accomplish with this lawsuit. Like, for instance, one of the big claims is that he's unhireable, right? We read that in the lawsuit. He's unhireable because these allegations. But right after he kind of filed this lawsuit, he was named executive director of Atheist Alliance International, right? So now
really?
he actually has a job in activism. Yeah. And so it didn't hurt his, like, all that stuff that he was saying in the lawsuit. It hurt this, it hurt that, it hurt this. It just happens not to be true, because if you look it up, he is the executive director of Atheist Alliance International as of right now. He's got a job in the movement, in activism. What was it? What was the purpose of saying all that in a lawsuit if it happens not to be true? He's actually working. He's doing the exact same thing that he said that he's not able to do in the lawsuit.
I mean, my own personal perception, I have not kept up with this, so most of my knowledge is coming from what you guys are talking about right now. This seems to me, if I had to make a guess, this is just my opinion, that it's not about necessarily winning in the court. This seems like it's about winning the public perception, that by filing the lawsuit, by being able to go on all these streams and talk about, this is how I was victimized, this allows him to escape some of the damages that happen to people just by being accused of sexual assault. And that by getting ahead of this socially, he has avoided a lot of the damage that could have been done, whether or not he wins or loses the lawsuit. The lawsuit might be just a strategy for winning in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, and maybe to be honest with you, it could also even be like, if you're trying to get these jobs in activism as, executive directors and stuff, the first question I would ask in an interview is like, if you're saying they defamed you, did you sue them?
Right.
So that could be this could be one of the offshoots of that. Like, if you're saying that these are all lies, why haven't you sued? Why haven't you done something?
Yeah.
So it may just be like, hey, okay, well, I did sue, but guess what? They're time barred. And the court said that, I really don't have a case. So, what can you do? I can't prove that she's lying, So that type of thing, I think, could be going on,
Yeah. That's what it feels like to me. Because I mean, he is in the court of public opinion. He's winning. He's
the only one speaking, but yes, he's absolutely winning, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, he's got, and like you said, he's got a job, and you were probably right. He probably was asked, did you sue them? And well, yeah, I did. There's a case going right now.
Yeah, and think about this, and I always say this, even with the whole sex, right now, from what's been alleged, we know that, number one, I don't think these are only two women that David Silverman slept with outside his marriage as president of American Atheist, right?
Right.
We're not being naive, that naive. And the fact that they've alleged a couple of things. They've alleged that there's been a woman that he was hired there that he was sleeping with that they had to rescind. And you had this other woman who says that she slept with him for a job. And then you have this third. So it gets to the point where, is it more reasonable to believe him, or is it more reasonable to believe the accusers at this point? At what level, at how many accusers do you need to have? Do you need, are we talking about Bill Cosby standard where you need 30, or is 3 enough, or is 2 enough, or is 1 enough? What are we talking about here?
And there's also the perception thing, because one side could easily perceive that I need to do this to get ahead, and the other side could perceive, I was just trying to get laid. This was not quid pro quo. You know what I mean? But both sides could view themselves as in the right on this one.
But
easily.
Ansgar, but Ansgar, let's keep it 100. And I
Yeah.
just said let's keep it 100.
Get him, Nate. Get him,
And
Nate.
what I mean by keeping it 100, you
Mhm.
got a middle-aged married man who
Oh yeah.
finds a very, very attractive woman, right? Then you meet her at a bar, you're walking. She says, "Hey, I'll give you some sex for a job." And at that point, he's going to say, "No, I am very good. No, no, no. Let's just go to the hotel room and have sex for nothing." And you're
Well,
going to go
yeah.
up there, you're going to have sex, and then she's going to then just leave, and it almost is laughable.
Yeah, but
Because
see,
I wouldn't have
these kinds
believed
of situations rarely come down to directly saying, "Let's have sex for this." It's usually a far more intricate social situation
What?
in which things are implied and suggested. You know what I
I
mean?
would
No,
agree
but
with
he
you,
said,
Ansgar. But
David
she
Silverman
says
said that.
she said that she actually came out and said, yes, I told him I wanted a job and I would have sex with him for a job. She actually said
Oh,
that.
there
So
you go.
she's on
Both
the
of them.
record.
And
So
David
this
Silverman
is,
said
you're
that
right,
too.
but yeah,
Yeah.
you are right under normal circumstances. This
Yeah.
is one of the things that makes this so interesting. And the other thing that we haven't covered, but we should just quickly say, and I'm gonna need to get going, and we are gonna do an after show. It's gonna be slightly different this time. I'll get into that in a second, but no, there are a few things that make this interesting. They were walking back to the hotel room, and she said, "Could I have a job and I'll have sex with you?" And he
Well,
said that
never
his
mind
reply
then.
was, "Yeah." He said his reply was, "No, but we're still gonna have sex anyway." And then they went and had sex anyway. That's the conversation.
And yet he still hired her.
And then
No. He didn't hire
her.
this one. He hired
Oh.
somebody else that got hired.
He hired at least
Who
one
also had
other,
sex.
maybe, and there were definitely, well, not, I shouldn't say definitely, but there's definitely some allegations of quid pro quo. And in that case, he basically said, "Look, she outright told me, I said no, but I'm just such a sexy guy. We had sex anyway." That's the argument. But to be
Okay.
fair, so you had said outside of his marriage, he was having sex. He had an open marriage, and some of the other people involved here had open marriages. So the fact that they were married doesn't mean that they were necessarily cheating on their spouses or anything like that, which is one of the things, and there was, and we didn't get into it. We had discussed it on your channel a bit, but in time, we're a bit of a classier show. We're not going to talk about the BDSM, the whips, the safe
Oh,
words, and
wait a
stuff
minute.
like that.
Wait a minute. We missed a conversation about BDSM and safe.
We did. I wanted to hit it, but we missed
We
it
ran out of
because
time.
he tied her up. He was whipping her. He was beating her. She was asking for more. Then she said a safe word. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know.
Details.
I know. I'm
yeah.
sorry. We missed it. I should have gotten to it. That's
Everyone
actually,
blame
that was
Nick.
the part of the discussion I was looking for.
Blame Nick.
Yeah.
Everyone blame Nick. We could have had sexy stories, but instead we talked about boring legal shit. Everyone blame
We talked
Nick.
about my bad. Well, I keep the entertaining stuff for Nate's channel.
Oh, okay.
So well, here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna have an after show. I'm gonna have to get going. We're gonna wrap this up. But I am going to drop into the Discord when I have a few minutes, and then Nate's going to be in the Discord for I think about 45 minutes. He's going to chat. He's going to offer some expertise. I don't think anybody really cares. I think it's when his daughter comes into the Discord that we're going to get the real legal knowledge. Up until then, I would trust his daughter over him. Whatever he says, it's
Yeah,
his daughter's the brains of the operation.
Yeah, we're not doing so much an after show as an after show hangout. It's
Yes.
not going to be on YouTube. But Dave just posted the link to go directly to the Discord channel for this conversation, and everyone can ask Nate his, advice and opinions on this case, because there's a lot more to cover.
Yes, there is,
Oh, yeah.
and somebody will bring up, I'm sure, the BDSM and the safe words. We now know David Silverman's safe word, which was more about David Silverman than I really needed to know.
All right,
but
you gotta say it. What was the safe word?
It was red.
Red?
Yeah, red.
Red.
They said it's a well-known safe word in the community.
Yeah.
But it is a little interesting to see on the streams, like okay, now when you use a safe word and when you're dead, it's just sort of like all of a sudden here we are with David Silverman, and then everyone's talking BDSM play, and it's fascinating. It's marvelous. It's actually a conversation on my level, even though I pretend it's like, let's talk about it. All right. So what I think we're going to do is, yeah, and I'm having major computer issues, and it turns out I've been glitching. The monitor has been glitching because my
Yeah.
USB ports are bad. So it's been, I mean, my computer's barely functioning. But I got to go run a few errands, and then I will be in the Discord. Ansgar's going to be in the Discord. Nate's going to be in the Discord. The link is up. So Ansgar, have I missed anything?
No, I don't think you have.
All right, well, Nate,
one thing.
yes.
I just want to say, if anybody wants to see the documents for the court, there's well, if you go to my channel, my latest video shows you how to go and find the documents, so you guys can go look at the documents for yourself. I always say this: don't trust me, trust the documents. So, you know, and I'll actually send a link here so you guys can see the links. You can have the link here so you guys can click.
And the
look at
moderators have
documents
been linking your channel in the live chat. So please, moderators, link his channel in the live chat again, just so that everyone knows where to go.
And Nate,
cool.
thank you very much for joining us. It was we had a marvelous time, and I think it was very informative. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the after show hangout.
Oh, I would definitely be there. And thanks again for having me. This was great. I hope I didn't bore everybody to death with all this.
No, this was fun, man. This was great. Thank you for coming out.
Sometimes it gets very dry.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think it was marvelous, and my favorite part was where Nate said, "Nobody trust me." All right, everybody, you heard it from Nate. Don't trust a thing he says.
Trust him.
Don't trust him.
Don't trust him. Trust the documents. Don't trust me. Please don't trust me.
All right. Thank you all very much, and see you next week.
Peace.